to talk to you about what I've learned and maybe what I haven't learned about conducting my own addiction neuromodulation trial. This comes from our work in Toronto. And some disclosures. The trial I'm going to show you was funded by NIDA and also some of the work by CHR, and I should disclose my editorship at MVP and a few other things. And okay, so starting out, this was actually just published in MVP. You probably recognize some of the people actually are here, Colleen, Von Steele, Victor had an award. So this was a updated systematic review of meta-analysis we did of addiction neuromodulation, about 100 studies, most of them TMS, TDCS, a few DBS ones. And the big hole in this, if you read it, mostly because Greg, we didn't include your trial, it was sort of late breaking as we submitted this, was a lack of cannabis studies. But clearly, we have work to do, so it's an ongoing journey. And so, we've been doing RTMS studies since I came to Toronto. I met Jeff Daskalakis, who's now in San Diego, and we started doing this in tobacco. And then, Canada legalized marijuana about 5 years ago. Now the whole country's gone to pot. And so we need treatments. And so, this is our black swan, I guess, right? Maybe, I don't know if we need to put that in a grant title or something, but you know what, it works. And whether it's craving, I look at, unprovoked craving, most people look at cue-induced craving, but I think, as I'll show you, we focused on schizophrenia, which has extremely high rates of cannabis use and addiction and cannabis use disorder. And, we use a pretty standard treatment, 20 treatments over 28 days of 20 hertz RTMS bilaterally to the prefrontal cortex. And it was called the CAN Stimulate study. Positive. It actually means something that I won't get in 50 minutes. But the objective was, 4 weeks of active versus sham. We had the sham coil that Jeff Daskalakis and Daniel Bloomer brought a few years ago. And so it was a chance to look at this in a very tough to treat, cannabis treatment-resistant population of people, outpatients with schizophrenia. And so the first thing I learned is that make sure you get the right people. So these were 4 very dedicated people, the 2 folks on top, Carolina and Darby, were my graduate students at the time. Carolina's in industry right now. Darby just started her PhD in clinical psych in Berkeley, and then Alex and then Julia. And these guys just were relentless. I fell down the stairs and broke my neck halfway through this trial. I'm not kidding, which is not a good thing to do when you're PI. So it tends to. Although they said, yeah, we don't really need it. Let's just move ahead. They forged all the connections with the clinicians in the schizophrenia program. I ran that program for 8 years, and it had no capital whatsoever. They just said, oh, we hated him so much. But you're nice. We were saving patients. But anyway, so we had fairly rigorous inclusion and exclusion criteria. The main thing is you were a stable outpatient. You met criteria for at least moderate to severe cannabis disorder. So we, had a hard target to try to go after right there. This was a randomized trial to active versus sham. The first thing we did, which I, now realize was clever, is we had a very good suggestion from program staff at NIDA. And, so we were into the business of paying people to quit smoking, to reduce their cannabis use. And they said, so how about this? Instead of paying them for changing their drug use behavior, why don't you pay them to do the treatment? Like, pay them progressive amounts of money to come into their RTMS sessions. And you know what? It worked brilliantly. In fact, so Greg, you may think at 70% you had a really high retention rate. Well, you do the math here, 100% in the active group, 80% in the sham group. So by my math, it's about 90%. So now it was only 20 subjects. So that's, although I learned at Yale many years ago, never do a clinical trial with more than 15 to 20 subjects, because it might actually work. So I've been in the business of doing hard trials. And the good news with the work of Carolina and Darby is that in our 2 primary outcomes here, cannabis use, we saw this it was the treatment by time interaction was like almost significant, like 0.07. But the effect size was huge. So you can see there in the open circles, 60% reduction in self-reported cannabis use. And then we looked at urine toxicology, THC, and not as pretty, but effect sizes in the 0.5 to 0.6 range as opposed to 0.8. So it was, with 20 subjects, it was a successful trial in terms of a signal, right? And so that was good. This is just a summary of everything we found. And the key thing that we sort of focused on was schizophrenia, addiction, multimodal assessment. So number one, we could show active versus sham. RTMS could reduce cannabis use. It could ensure it could reduce unprovoked craving. It actually reduced positive symptoms, so the delusions, hallucinations, schizophrenia that get you in the hospital. It improved attention, and actually it reduced tobacco use, which went along with the early studies we did with RTMS for tobacco addiction and schizophrenia. So that was good. And okay, so I'm going to hopefully save us some time. So my lessons learned, especially in the schizophrenia population, temper your expectations about initial recruitment. So the R21 was 40 subjects. I told you I fell down the stairs halfway through the trial. COVID hit us. A couple of the students graduated. So we got 24. Then 4 or 5 dropped out after the first session. So we had 19 randomized. So, it was okay. Participant retention. In this population, I know this is true of everyone, but in the schizophrenia population where, dropouts just in clinical treatment are extraordinarily high. The fact that we got 80 to 90% of these people to stay in the 4 weeks of the trial and even complete the 1 month follow-up, we had to be clever. And so they respond to incentives just like everyone, right? Multimodal assessments were helpful, and I think recruiting that dream team to make sure that you can actually, pull it off in terms of feasibility is all I have to say. And I'm done. So.